Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? Hello? We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. Y'all, we got a lot to get to this week, but before we do that, I want to start off by reminding you that you can make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any Zoo News episodes on Fridays or interview episodes on Tuesday. Make sure you're following along on the socials at Rossifari and on TikTok at Rossifari Pod. And don't forget that you can also support the pod by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, and this is Rossifari Zoo News. It is a crowdsourced Zoo News program, so you can send me cool Zoo News stories, and I'll say your name at the end of the episode. You can tag me in them on the socials, or you can email them to me, rossifaripod@gmail.com. So got a bunch of little things to talk about in this first section. First of all, I have to start by celebrating something huge today. Y'all, not counting the trailer, this is the 500th episode of the Rossifari podcast. 500 episodes. And so many of y'all have gone back and listened to every single episode. And that just blows my mind and makes me so incredibly happy. It is such a cool feeling to celebrate this huge milestone with all the Rossifarians out there. So thank you for being here, supporting what I do, and for being awesome. And speaking of ways to support what I do, we have another new patron to welcome to the family. Sam Evans, who is also a former guest and is an awesome keeper at the Honolulu Zoo, or, Honolulu, has decided to join the patron family. Now, let's be super clear here. Sam has not become a patron because she loves the work I do here, or because she believes in my mission, or because she supports me personally because we've become friends. No, absolutely not. It is because of the monthly patron exclusive stickers that she has become a patron. Which, fair. But she didn't have to make it just so clear that she only had that one reason to support me. I kid, of course. Sam's awesome and a great friend. And if you haven't heard her episode, one of 500, you're really missing out. Honolulu Zoo has some really unique and cool challenges and opportunities because of their location, and it was definitely fun to explore that with Sam. Weirdly, stickers did not come up in that episode. But yeah, and so if you don't know what I'm talking about, of course, we have some patron exclusive stickers, and they're being made by Cappy Trails. The first one is currently able to be seen on my social media, and it's all very exciting. So yeah, very good stuff. I also need to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who reached out this week about last week's episode, in particular, the political discussion. Turns out that, at least amongst those of you who wrote, that was a very popular segment. So regardless of whether you loved it, hated it, didn't care, or flat out skipped it, I do just want to reiterate that this podcast will not be changing format into some kind of political show or something like that. I think there may already be one or two of those types of podcasts out there. But thank you for all the comments and, frankly, for the validation. I really did appreciate it all, and it was pretty cool not getting a single negative response, although I welcome those as well. And that brings us to this week, which finds me gigging in and around McAllen, Texas, doing a little tour down here. My band, the Shakedown Shuffle, is rocking it out. And I actually think we're going to head to Mexico one morning just because it's so close. As a matter of fact, if all goes well, the day that you're listening to this, I'll be headed to Gladys Porter Zoo, a facility in southern Texas that I haven't been to yet, but I'm really excited to go check out. So I hope that works out. I didn't reach out to them about podcast stuff because I've been busy, but it's always cool to see a new place. So doing that and planning on heading to Mexico for like breakfast one morning or something because I have a weird life. So why not? I will say that while we are down here in Texas, I am sharing a huge Airbnb with my band. We always insist on, each having our own room, and there are 5 of us. So it's like a big house with multiple bedrooms and a pool and basketball courts and all this cool stuff. So I'm in a pretty private area recording right now. But if you hear stupidity in the background, we're musicians, and I am not in a super great hidey place. So I don't know if that'll happen or not. But if so, now you are aware. And so with all of that said, let's get to
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ow, there's a funky monkey, tree kangaroo, or a binturong.
It's Zoo News.
Yeah.
And so we're going to start this segment, as we often do, with our headline story. But unlike usual, I won't be the one giving it to you all. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this part of my podcast over to the one and only very lovely Dr. Zoe Rossi.
Hello. I don't like recording things. Okay, so John asked me to record a thing about the proposed mid-level practitioner position in veterinary medicine because I'm a veterinarian, and so I have things to say about it. Currently, it's something that's been proposed in Colorado and Florida primarily, and in Colorado, the initial proposal has passed for creating this new position. That's a mid-level practitioner, or MLP. I've seen it called some other things in other places, but basically what it is a veterinary equivalent of a physician's assistant or PA, or like a NP, nurse practitioner, or a PRN, advanced practice registered nurse, which is a thing in human medicine. And it would be a role kind of between a full veterinarian and a veterinary technician or veterinary nurse. The idea is that this would fulfill this proposed gap between those two positions and allow for more patients to be seen. Pretty much everyone within the veterinary community, all the professional organizations have put up statements opposing this proposition for a variety of reasons. The main ones that seem to be brought up the most are that, first of all, the problems that this proposal is trying to fix are probably not real problems. So there isn't really a gap right now between the role that veterinarians play and the role that veterinary technicians play. Veterinarians are the ones who diagnose disease and come up with treatment plans for disease in the simplest terms, and technicians are the ones who help us to carry out those treatment plans and do treatments and help us complete diagnostics and that kind of thing. And we have different training programs that prepare us for those two roles. The idea with this mid-level position is that would it fill in some gap between those two roles, but there isn't really a gap. The other thing that it's proposed to potentially do is help with this veterinary shortage that people talk about. That's probably not a real thing. There was a huge increase in demand for specifically companion animal veterinarians, so veterinarians taking care of dogs and cats during the pandemic. But for the most part, it seems that that was a temporary increase in demand for a lot of complicated reasons that I don't completely understand. But it seems to be calming down now where there isn't as much demand at this point. There have also been a lot of steps that have been taken to hopefully help to meet that demand in the future. Specifically, 3 new veterinary schools have opened in the last few years that are going to have graduating classes starting soon that are entering the workforce. So there's 3 more vet schools in the U.S. than there were previously. There are also 2 schools that completely doubled their class sizes. So they used to have one cohort a year, and now they're having two of the same size. So that's basically the equivalent of 5 new schools along with the other 2 new schools. And there are 12 other schools that are proposing adding veterinary programs to make new vets, full-fledged vets. That are coming. So it doesn't really make sense to say that we have a veterinary shortage or that we will in the next few years, given how much we've increased that. What we do have more of is a veterinary technician and veterinary assistant shortage, especially because a lot of people in those positions tend to leave. We don't tend to pay them well. We often aren't able to use them to the best of their training because of the way that pressures in corporate veterinary medicine are going for increasing efficiency and cutting costs. We tend to underutilize those positions, and we don't have enough of them. But adding on this mid-level practitioner role would probably just increase demand for those positions without helping us to have any more of them, because a mid-level practitioner would also need technicians and assistants to help them with doing exams and doing treatments for their patients. And so it's just going to take that already really small pool and spread it even thinner. So it's probably going to make that worse, not better. Another important part of this that specifically the AVMA brings up in their statement opposing these positions is that as of right now, there is not a national licensing or accreditation system in place for these mid-level practitioners. It's being proposed kind of piecewise, state by state, to kind of figure out how to accredit these people as they're coming out of training programs. And that can be really dangerous, both for individual animals who are being treated by them, as well as for public health and public safety. Veterinarians, we do take care of individual animals. Dogs and cats are the ones people think of the most, but we're also responsible for the care of food animals, production animals. We're responsible for the care of wildlife, obviously in captive settings, but also that are in the wild. We are responsible for managing zoonotic diseases that can be transferred from animals to humans. And there's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of training that we get as part of school to make sure that we know what we're doing and that we don't do anything that's going to risk public safety. And it's unclear as of now how that training is going to be incorporated into these proposed mid-level practitioner roles. So there's a real risk that it could endanger public safety and public health, depending on how these people are trained. Another big concern is that the proposed training for a lot of these programs is primarily virtual. So it's going to be mostly just an online class, online certifications that you can get. I know I've at least heard that the proposed trainings in Colorado specifically don't really have any in-person training or have very, very minimal in-person training. And these people are going to be technically allowed legally to perform surgeries. I know I read a thing about the proposal in Florida, and it said specifically, they're only going to be able to do really basic surgeries like spay and neuter for dogs and cats. But even a basic spay in a dog is a full open abdominal surgery. There's a lot that can go wrong. There's a lot that you need to know about how to deal with. And yes, it's not too hard to learn how to do the very basic, everything goes exactly right spay, but you never know that that's what you're going to get going in. And especially with the areas that these proposed people are supposed to be helping with. So, high volume spay and neuter with pets that either, belong to owners who have limited financial resources or don't have owners at all. Those animals are the ones that we're going to have the least information about going in and, not be able to do screening blood work or do imaging prior to proceeding with surgeries. So you don't know what you're going to get when you go into surgery. And it's not fair to those animals to have people who don't have complete training and sometimes may not even have any hands-on experience who are going to be responsible for their care. Another big issue with this is that all of these proposed mid-level positions would require some level of supervision from a licensed veterinarian. And that's just going to put more work on existing veterinarians to be supervising additional people when they are trying to, do their job and be a vet. They're also going to have to be supervising other people who are trying to do their job. And right now, there's no kind of national consensus in terms of liability. So most likely, all of these people working at a mid-level position would be under the liability of the veterinarian's license. So the veterinarian themselves would be responsible for anything they do, which is currently how it is for technicians and assistants. But technicians and assistants have a limited role and are not responsible for diagnosing or coming up with treatment plans. So those are things that we do as veterinarians, and so we have liability for. And it's not clear as of this time how those mid-level positions would have kind of liability assigned to the supervising veterinarian. There's some inconsistencies right now in the proposals about whether, for example, a veterinarian would need to be physically present at a facility for a mid-level practitioner to be doing things like surgery, or if they'd be able to do it on their own. And if they're able to do it on their own with a veterinarian not even in the building, it's hard to see how that veterinarian's personal liability insurance would be able to cover for that. So it's really unclear. In just kind of basic summary, most of the national and state specific professional organizations for veterinarians. So specifically the AVMA, which is American Veterinary Medical Association, that's the big one, as well as AHA, which is the American Animal Hospital Association, the ABVP, which is American Board of Veterinary Practitioners, which is like it's like a specialty for people who are specializing in various types of general practice. So like if you want to be really good at general practice, you can get an ABVP board certification. The Student American Veterinary Medical Association, SAVMA, and then most specific state organizations as well, professional organizations, all oppose this. All are not on board. The people who are proposing it and pushing for it are more people who are kind of at the level of seeing the need for more veterinary care for patients who are in communities who, may not be able to access good quality veterinary care, and they think that this is a solution. But, because of all of the reasons that I just summarized, this is not a good solution. There are other things that we can do that may be more helpful, but this mid-level practitioner just probably isn't going to help with the problems that they are seeing. That was a lot of words. I hope that John edits this for the parts where I said dumb stuff. Okay, thanks, bye.
Did I edit it for the parts where she said dumb stuff, or did I just leave it as was because she's brilliant and doesn't say dumb stuff? The world will never know. Okay, yeah, I edited it. Hey, who can talk that long without stumbling a little bit? But I hope that was a really good, really in-depth look at this huge problem that is gaining traction in a couple of states now, and I'm hearing rumors that it's going to be recommended in other places as well. So super not great. But yeah, and that brings us to our births for the week. Dickerson Park Zoo has announced the birth of a white-faced saki monkey to Mom Kuyuni and Dad Blackbeard. Arr. Sorry. Both are first-time parents. The sex of the baby is still unknown to the staff, meaning they won't know what the baby will look like as it grows, as the species is sexually dimorphic, with males going from brown to black with white faces at around 2 months old. Very cool fact. Our friends at the Chattanooga Zoo, or Chattanooga, are celebrating the hatching of a leaf-tailed gecko. Now, when born, these little geckos are only 3 inches long, which is so adorable. So congrats to the zoo on this incredible tiny birth. Karlsruhe Zoo, I'm probably butchering that, in Germany, is celebrating the birth of a polar bear cub born to mother Nuka. The area around the habitat is closed to allow Nuka full access without having to worry about people seeing the little one and making her nervous. But there's another polar bear cub in human care, something we desperately need right now. Great news at the zoo. And, it's pretty cool that you're going to be able to see a polar bear cub on exhibit soon there. Yay! And then last but not least, in births this week, Cameron Park Zoo has announced the birth of a baby Kirk's Dick named Rivet. Born to Velcro and Hinata, the little one is doing very well. The species is actually monogamous, a rarity in antelope species, meaning that this little one will be sticking to mom and dad like Velcro for a while. And that terrible joke brings us to our deaths for the week. The Edinburgh Zoo has said goodbye to Kevin, a 14-year-old male red panda. Kevin was the oldest male red panda at the zoo and had been facing age-related medical challenges for a while. A father of 7 cubs, Kevin was not only popular with female red pandas, but was also a favorite of the staff at the zoo. He is greatly missed. The Montgomery Zoo has announced the passing of 3 animals this week. Boris the binturong, Jolene the greater kudu, and Lola the ocelot. Jolene was the matriarch of the greater kudu herd at 8.5 years old. She fell ill shortly after giving birth to her calf Brooks 5 months ago, and the decision was made to euthanize her. Lola the ocelot was 21 years old and had been retired and living behind the scenes for the last 2 years due to health issues brought on by old age. Lola had a love of strong perfumes and was known for being incredibly sassy. And Boris was only 5.5 years old at the time of his passing, a very young age for a binturong to pass. Sadly, he was born with a heart condition, and when it became impossible to manage his condition medically while maintaining his quality of life, the decision was made to humanely euthanize him. Despite being a young binturong, Boris was known for being the grumpy old man of the zoo, which is somehow even more endearing than being cute and adorable. And so weeks like this are just horrible for a facility, but it's awesome to know that each animal received the best care available until they passed. Sending love to the team at the zoo after what must have been a truly traumatic week. The Staten Island Zoo has said goodbye to Earl the serval. Earl was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago, and despite the best efforts of the vet and keeper teams, it was this disease that took his life. He was known for being incredibly curious and playful, especially when it came to enrichment. He was also very vocal and affectionate, nuzzling his keepers whenever he greeted them. Earl was just shy of his 20th birthday at the time of his passing, and he moved to the zoo when he was just a few months old. Amazingly, some of the keepers that took care of him at the end of his life had been there that entire time, loving him for almost 2 decades. Sending love to the entire team, especially those who spent Earl's entire life with him. Addie, an 18-and-a-half-year-old African lion, has passed away at Dickerson Park Zoo. Addie was suffering from kidney failure, with his team having frequent quality of life assessment meetings, and at the last one, the decision was made to euthanize. He was known for being a very grumpy old man and being very vocal about it, but he was also really awesome at training, which helped when he needed medical treatments as he aged. I love that the zoo's announcement not only focused on how great the lion was, but also talked about the recurring quality of life assessment meetings. Just amazing work done by an entire team to worry about this one animal. Awesome, awesome work. John Ball Zoo has said goodbye to Peggy, the 55-year-old female chimpanzee. She was the elder of the chimp troop at the zoo and was known for her sassy behavior, making incredibly sweet faces, and having an incredibly loud and unique scream. She outlived the life expectancy of chimps in AZA zoos by a solid 15 years. Sending condolences to the team at John Ball Zoo, as well as the teams at Cleveland Metro Park Zoo and the Detroit Zoo, where she lived previously. All 3 teams did an amazing job taking care of her for her to have reached the age she did. Everyone involved with her care should be incredibly proud. And then last but not least this week, Zoo Berlin is dealing with the unexpected passing of Victor the elephant. He was 31 years old, having spent the last 25 at Zoo Berlin. Victor showed no signs of illness until very recently when he started losing weight. The veterinary team started taking blood samples and checking values, but were not able to diagnose any issues, and he passed away before the team was able to figure out what was going on. The hope is that a necropsy will give them answers, but as of now, his passing is a mystery. And moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our Zoo News section. All right, so we've talked a lot about the current plan for elephants in the AZA, in particular in American zoos, and how it seems to be trending towards more animals in larger herds that live in larger habitats, even with that meaning that less zoos will have the species. Well, it turns out that the U.S. isn't the only place making that move. Zoos in Australia and New Zealand are working together for the same goal. Now, the Australia Zoo is still planning on keeping their own herd, but every other facility in Australia and New Zealand are in the process of moving their elephants to live in the large free-range zoos in the country, where they can have expansive habitats and multiple herds. With elephants being both incredibly iconic animals and also some of the most controversial animals in human care, it's interesting and cool to see the industry moving in this direction, especially in multiple places. Cold stunning season is in full effect for sea turtles, and many of the accredited zoos and aquariums we love are working hard to rescue, rehabilitate, and release sea turtles that are cold stunned. The Houston Zoo recently released 42 green sea turtles back into the Gulf of Mexico. And our friends at New England Aquarium, the Mississippi Aquarium, Brevard Zoo, Pittsburgh Zoo, Turtleback Zoo, South Carolina Aquarium, and so many other amazing facilities are working their butts off to save the species right now. And it just makes me so happy to see all these facilities come together to help save sea turtles. Keep in mind, most of this work is done behind the scenes. A few of the facilities let you see them do the rehab work, and you can actually see the turtles in those moments. But it's not super common, and, even the ones that do let you see that, they then send them back out. It's not like they're getting new permanent attractions. They do this because they love and care about animals, and it makes me so happy. All right, I have a big update on one of the most beloved guests of the recent episodes of the podcast. Jeff Ewalt, the executive director of ZooMontana, has decided to move to a new position, having been named the chief zoological officer at Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium in Nebraska. Now, Henry Doorly is one of the biggest and most impressive facilities I've ever been to, and I cannot wait to see what Jeff's leadership brings to what is already a beyond incredible facility. As you may remember, Jeff had a major impact on ZooMontana, transforming the zoo into an incredible zoo and conservation organization, changing the entire culture of the team there, and bringing very needed leadership to the zoo at a time when it was, frankly, craving it. I have such mad respect for Jeff and loved catching up with him at the AZA annual meeting this year. He just inspires me every time I talk to him, and I am so excited to see what he does at Henry Doorly. Even as an incredible facility, I have no doubt that Jeff will take it to the next level. Congrats, Jeff. Oh, and remember how last week I mentioned that the Lehigh Valley Zoo was celebrating the birth of a new eland calf, and that since his mom is Moira, he should be named David? Well, the zoo has officially named the calf David. Either I'm psychic or there are people at the Lehigh Valley Zoo that have heard of Schitt's Creek. It's definitely one of those two. And then as another sort of follow-up to last week, in that episode, I mentioned that you can find a zoo you want to support that is doing a Name a Roach or other type of campaign like that for Valentine's Day. Well, another thing to be on the lookout for is special Valentine events taking place at your local zoo or aquarium. Many offer evenings at the zoo where you can meet ambassador animals. A lot are aimed exclusively at adults, and many of them even include humorous presentations about mating at the zoo. Now, Zoe and I have attended a few of these, and they are always a blast. This year, I have to give note to one particular zoo that is having an event like this. The Potawatomi Zoo is having an event called, wait for it, Phallus Fallacies. There are a lot of weird animal penises out there, and now you can separate fact from fiction about some of the hardest rumors to dispel in the animal kingdom. Sorry, I had to slip in at least one penis joke. Otherwise, y'all would think I'd gone soft. Okay, I'm going to stop dicking around now and get back to talking about animals like pandas, binturongs, dicks, and cocks.
Conservation, news time. Oh, yeah.
No, seriously, y'all thought I was making a joke when I ended that last story, but it turns out that there has been a huge outbreak of bird flu at one of the largest commercial chicken farms in the country. See, Cox. The current expectation is that chicken prices may rise by 15 to 20% in the coming weeks or months because of this single outbreak. And while that's not exactly conservation, it is yet again a stark reminder of the fact that bird flu is causing huge issues for the birds of the world. Whether it's Andean condors or California condors or bald eagles or even something as plentiful as commercial chickens, the disease is having a profound effect on the population. And information is going to be harder to come by from the U.S. government thanks to new rules and regulations like we talked about last week. So if you're a person who cares about this story at all, and you should be, I would highly recommend checking out the Public Health Agency of Canada for the most up-to-date information, even if you're looking for information about the United States. Oh, actually, hi, welcome back. You don't know this, but I had left and the episode was done, and now I'm coming back in to record something because I just got an email from Beardsley Zoo, and yes, this could go in Zoo News, but it makes sense in this story. Anyway, Beardsley Zoo just sent out an email announcing that a cotton patch goose that was found deceased turns out had avian influenza, and we're talking about a bird at the zoo. So protect the rest of the bird collection. The farmyard and the outdoor aviary are temporarily closed. Access to birds has been limited to care providers and veterinary staff. All volunteer and guest experiences with birds are canceled, and animal care staff will have specific tools that they have to use and clean properly when working with birds, and bird care staff will be wearing PPE until they are sure they are safe. So yeah, just had to duck back in here because we're talking about avian influenza, and it turns out there's at least one case at Beardsley right now. Definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on and being hopeful for all our friends at Beardsley. Okay, back to the episode, although to you it'll just sound like we're going to keep going with the episode. Anyway, a few weeks ago, a tropical cyclone formed in the ocean near Madagascar, sending floodwaters onto the island in unexpected places. One of the areas that flooded included the Lavavolo Tortoise Center, a rescue and rehabilitation facility dedicated to saving radiated and spider tortoises from the illegal wildlife trade. Most of the 12,000 tortoises that call the center home were swept away in the floodwaters, but this story doesn't have the sad ending you might be expecting. Sanctuary staff put the word out, and members of the community and even local police officers joined the effort to save the tortoises, which are fortunate because they're good swimmers. In fact, some of the rescuers even converted the damaged buildings at the sanctuary into rafts for the tortoises to ride on as they were found and rescued. While exact numbers haven't been released yet, it looks like a vast majority of the tortoises were saved due to this incredible community effort. And think about it. This is a community that was dealing with flooding, not just at the Tortoise Center, but throughout the whole area. But they still came together to help the tortoises in need, and did so quickly and effectively. I love that story so much. Now, in the last story that I just finished, were you shocked to discover that one center in Madagascar was caring for 12,000 tortoises that were victims of the illegal wildlife trade? That number is really staggering, right? And the numbers are staggering because obviously the people taking these animals out of the wild are not doing so with any concern for their welfare as they transport them, which really increases the numbers coming out of the wild. It's just a numbers game to these people. And for instance, for our next story, 116 tortoises were recently returned to Tanzania from Thailand as evidence in a case against a wildlife smuggling network. The crazy thing is that all 116 tortoises were discovered hidden in the luggage of a Ukrainian woman who had taken a flight. Now, I'm writing this story up as I'm sitting in an airport, and it's just crazy to think about trying to fit 116 tortoises into any piece of luggage I see around me. Like, even for people who fly with multiple suitcases or backpacks, that's still just a heck of a lot of tortoises. And this is just one tiny woman. It is really crazy to think about the numbers of animals that must be smuggled through airports daily. Sadly, in this story, 98 of the 116 tortoises have died in the last 2 years since they were confiscated. But all of the animals are being returned to Tanzania as evidence, even the dead ones. Hopefully, the suffering they went through is at least somewhat avenged by the legal system there. All right, so for this next topic, there's an interesting question, which is, how does a species get declared extinct? It really is an intriguing question. You can pull a Michael Scott and just yell, "I declare extinction," but that doesn't actually work. Each government entity and NGO has its own standards, but the basic idea is generally that when there have been no confirmed sightings of a species for an extended period of time, as well as a lack of evidence of the species still existing, such as like scat or whatever, then the committee that is part of whatever body is making the call can declare the species extinct. So most of the time, it's not really something where we truly know the species is gone. And with increases in the availability of tracking technology and camera traps and such, coupled with the decrease in prices of said tech, it has gotten easier and easier for conservationists to rediscover species after they have been declared extinct. An animal that might not be gone, but that is pretty darn willing to stay away from areas humans visit and has a low population, might, not be afraid of camera traps because they're not humans. And I said all of that to explain why I'm about to drop my third story of an animal being rediscovered in the last few weeks. Conservationists in the UK have discovered a female greater mouse-eared bat hibernating in South Downs National Park. The species was declared extinct back in 1992, but this new find gives hope to the species maybe continuing. That'd be cool. Scientists are working to protect and restore habitat in the area that the bat traditionally called home, in the hopes that there are others around and that the population will grow if their lands come back. But as of now, there is only evidence of one still existing. So it'll be interesting to see if the conservation efforts are successful, and if so, if a population reemerges. But yeah, I think as tech keeps getting better, you're just going to see a lot more of rediscoveries of species that we think are extinct, and also of behaviors that we've never seen before. I did a story about that last week. I had one that didn't make it this week, but I just think that technology is going to really help us understand animals better, which is cool because, technology has its pros and its cons. But yeah. And then last but not least in this section, last year we talked about an exciting vote in Colorado in which the population voted to reintroduce wolves to the state, with the goal being to restore a thriving wolf population to the area. As part of this program, 15 gray wolves have been captured in British Columbia and reintroduced into Colorado. These wolves come from an area where wolf packs are known to have not had conflict with farm animals, something people in Colorado are concerned about. Other steps are being taken to mitigate conflict between farm animals and wolves, and thus farmers and wolves, including a ranger rider program, the development of response teams to any conflict that might arise, the purchase of effective non-lethal tools to mitigate conflict without killing the wolves, a site assessment program, and more. This is the second reintroduction under this new program, with more expected in the future. Overall, it seems like the program is doing well, but there are concerns. One wolf has already been shot during this time, and while a substantial reward is being offered for information about the poacher, the search is still ongoing. But overall, great news, which is, in case you didn't know it, my favorite kind of conservation news. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, right now it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
Months ago, I mentioned that 43 monkeys had escaped a research facility in South Carolina. 4 were returned almost immediately, and more were returned the following week, but the rest of the monkeys have been on the lam and slowly getting captured until this last week, where the last 4 of the monkeys were captured nearly 3 full months after escaping the research facility. The facility has neglected to mention how the monkeys were found and captured, but says that all 4 were returned in good health. New research into bonnet-head sharks, a small species of hammerhead shark, has discovered something remarkable. The species is omnivorous, making it the first such shark ever discovered. Bonnet-head sharks are capable of digesting both meat and plant material using specialized digestive enzymes to break down and extract nutrients from seagrass, an obvious evolutionary adaptation based on the amount of seagrass in its home range. While this is the first known species of omnivorous shark, it's very clear that they have yet to discover any vegan sharks because there aren't any species that build their entire personalities around their veganism. Sorry. And last but not least, I believe it's Mr. Rogers who said that when you see a tragedy, look for the heroes to feel better. Well, the fires in LA have certainly given us a lot of heroes to look at, and this story is such a small but beautiful one I had to share. Unfortunately, the fires left a lot of LA animal shelters overcrowded. A nonprofit organization named Wings of Rescue stepped in, flying 7 planes full of dogs from LA shelters to non-kill shelters that were away from the fires, saving literally hundreds of dogs in the process. Always look for the heroes.
Oh, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
All right, it is still January as this episode drops, but just barely. January doesn't get its own animal month, but January 31st is International Zebra Day. And that brings us to February, which is Adopt a Rescue Rabbit Month, International Hoof Care Month, National Bird Feeding Month, and Fishing Cat February. And that's 4 months sharing February after there were no animal months in January. Just saying. Now, admittedly, Fishing Cat February wouldn't land super well in January, but the rest totally could. I digress. Anyway, moving on to individual days. February 1st is the National Day of the Mexican Axolotl and Serpent Day. February 2nd is Groundhog Day, Hedgehog Day, Armadillo Day, World Wetlands Day, and Ostrich Day. Oh, and then that's it for the week. You know how I harp on organizations and their need to do a better day picking their day of the week? This first week of February might be the most perfect example of that out there. So many days on the 2nd, and then just boop, nothing. We're done. Those are your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Zoo News is done, coming to you live. Well, not really, from Texas. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Don't forget to be back here on Tuesday for an all-new interview episode. And before we get going, I would like to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. I would also like to say thank you to everyone who sent me stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck. Obviously, Dr. Zoe Rossi put in a little bit of work, right? Lizard Dunlevy, Rowena White, Danny Poirier Larson, Dr. Natalie Taco, Anna McEachran, Dr. Laura Schenk, Jacob Zinn, Sam Evans, Michelle Johnson, Matt Patford, Crystal Chapman, Barbara Bennett, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Jay Meredith, April Taylor, and Taran Hanton, whose name autocorrects to Tarzan Hampton when I type it on my phone. So thank you, Tarzan Hampton, for sending me a story. And, thanks to everyone else, too. So that's all we got this week. Remember, friends, the words Newsy Credits Backwards are Steiderk Yiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
Even as it blah, blah, blah.